The Si Chung disaster. On February 15, 1996, China prepared to launch the Long March 3B rocket from the Si Chung Satellite Launch Center. The mission was supposed to place an international communications satellite into orbit. It was one of the most important launches in China's growing space program. Everything appeared ready. The countdown reached 0. The engines ignited, the rocket lifted off, but almost immediately, something went wrong. Just seconds after leaving the launch pad, the rocket suddenly veered off course. Instead of climbing toward space, it began turning sideways. Engineers watching from the control center realized something was terribly wrong. There was nothing they could do. About 22 seconds after liftoff, the rocket crashed into a hillside near the launch site. A massive explosion followed. The satellite was destroyed instantly. The blast created an enormous fireball that lit up the night sky. Shockwaves spread across the surrounding area. Nearby buildings were heavily damaged. Official Chinese reports stated that 6 people were killed and 57 were injured, but almost immediately, questions began to emerge. Video footage showed the rocket crashing close to residential areas. Some witnesses claimed the true number of casualties was far higher. Over the years, estimates ranging from dozens to hundreds of deaths have circulated. However, none of those higher figures have ever been independently verified. Because access to the disaster site was tightly controlled, the true death toll remains unknown. Investigators determined that a failure in the rocket's guidance system caused it to lose control just after launch. Voskhod 2. On March 18, 1965, the Soviet Union launched Voskhod 2 with 2 cosmonauts on board. Their mission was to accomplish something no human had ever done before: perform the world's first spacewalk. Everything went according to plan. After reaching orbit, cosmonaut Alexei Leonov climbed through an inflatable airlock and stepped into open space. For the first time in history, a human being floated outside a spacecraft. Leonov drifted nearly 5 meters away from the capsule, connected only by a safety tether. For about 12 minutes, the mission was a complete success. Then something went wrong. The vacuum of space caused Leonov's spacesuit to inflate far more than expected. The suit became so rigid that he could barely move. His gloves stiffened. His boots became difficult to control. Then he tried to return to the spacecraft. He couldn't fit through the airlock. Every attempt failed. His oxygen supply continued dropping. His body temperature rose rapidly as he struggled against the swollen suit. If he remained outside much longer, he would run out of oxygen. Leonov made a dangerous decision. Without permission from mission control, he manually released air from his spacesuit. The pressure inside the suit dropped. If he released too much, he risked losing consciousness from decompression. If he released too little, he would never fit through the hatch. The gamble worked. His suit finally became small enough to squeeze through the narrow airlock. But the mission still wasn't over. During re-entry, the spacecraft's automatic landing system failed. The crew was forced to manually guide the capsule back to Earth. Instead of landing in the planned recovery zone, Voskhod 2 came down hundreds of kilometers off course in a remote forest in the Ural Mountains. The area was covered in deep snow. Temperatures were well below freezing. Rescue helicopters couldn't land because of the dense trees. Leonov and Commander Pavel Belyayev spent nearly 2 days alone in the wilderness before rescuers finally reached them. The mission made history. It also revealed how little engineers understood about the dangers of working in the vacuum of space. The lessons learned from Voskhod 2 helped shape the design of future spacesuits and made every spacewalk that followed far safer. Soyuz 11. On June 6, 1971, 3 Soviet cosmonauts lifted off aboard Soyuz 11. Their destination was Salyut 1, the world's first space station. The mission was a complete success. For 23 days, Georgy Dobrovolsky, Vladislav Volkov, and Viktor Patsayev lived and worked in orbit. They performed scientific experiments, tested new equipment, and set a new world record for the longest time spent in space. Everything had gone according to plan. Now there was only one step left: getting home. On June 29th, the crew undocked from the space station and began their return to Earth. The Soyuz spacecraft was built in 3 parts: the orbital module, where the crew had lived and worked in space; the service module, which carried the engines, fuel, and electrical systems; and the descent module, the small capsule that would carry the 3 cosmonauts safely back to Earth. Just before entering Earth's atmosphere, the spacecraft separated into its 3 sections. The orbital module drifted away. The service module also separated. Both later burned up in Earth's atmosphere. Only the descent module continued toward Earth with the crew still inside. The spacecraft re-entered the atmosphere exactly as expected. Ground controllers received no distress calls. Everything appeared normal. The parachutes deployed. The capsule landed safely in Kazakhstan. Recovery crews rushed toward the spacecraft, expecting to welcome 3 national heroes. Instead, they found something no one expected. The crew wasn't moving. The hatch was opened. All 3 cosmonauts were still strapped into their seats, but they were already dead. Investigators soon discovered what had happened. During the spacecraft's separation sequence, a small pressure equalization valve had opened unexpectedly. The opening measured only a few millimeters, but in the vacuum of space, that was enough. Air rushed out of the capsule in less than 2 minutes. Without pressure suits, the crew had almost no chance of survival. As the air escaped, the pressure inside the capsule dropped to almost zero. The air trapped inside their lungs rapidly expanded. The oxygen in their blood disappeared within seconds. Their brains were no longer getting the oxygen they needed. Within about 10 to 15 seconds, all 3 men lost consciousness. The extremely low pressure also caused moisture on their eyes, tongue, and inside their mouths to begin vaporizing. Their bodies started to swell slightly in the vacuum, but there was nothing they could do. Within less than 2 minutes, all 3 cosmonauts had died from suffocation caused by the loss of cabin pressure. The tragedy changed Soviet spaceflight forever. After the Soyuz 11 disaster, Soviet crews were required to wear pressure suits during every launch and landing. A tiny valve had claimed 3 lives and changed the future of human spaceflight. Cosmos 954. On September 18, 1977, the Soviet Union launched a satellite called Cosmos 954. Unlike most satellites, it carried something highly unusual, a small nuclear reactor. The reactor supplied electricity to the satellite's powerful radar system as it passed over Earth. For several months, the mission appeared to be successful. Cosmos 954 completed orbit after orbit, collecting military intelligence. Then something went wrong. The satellite suddenly stopped responding correctly. Engineers lost control of its orbit. Instead of moving into a higher disposal orbit at the end of its mission, Cosmos 954 began falling back toward Earth. No one knew exactly where it would land. As the satellite descended, governments around the world began tracking its path. The biggest concern wasn't the spacecraft itself. It was the nuclear reactor still on board. If it survived re-entry, radioactive material could be scattered across populated areas. On January 24, 1978, the satellite entered Earth's atmosphere. It broke apart high above northern Canada. Thousands of pieces of debris rained down across the Northwest Territories. The radioactive wreckage was scattered over an area of nearly 124,000 square kilometers, larger than many countries. Canadian and American teams immediately launched a massive recovery effort, known as Operation Morning Light. Using aircraft equipped with radiation detectors, search crews spent months flying over frozen forests, lakes, and snow-covered wilderness. Whenever radiation was detected, recovery teams landed to collect the contaminated debris. Many pieces were highly radioactive. Anyone who touched one without protection could have received a dangerous dose of radiation. Special protective equipment was required before they could even be handled. Fortunately, no deaths or confirmed radiation injuries were ever reported. Despite months of searching, not every fragment was recovered. Some radioactive debris remains missing to this day. The incident became one of the largest radioactive cleanup operations ever caused by a spacecraft. It also raised serious concerns about placing nuclear reactors into Earth orbit. A satellite designed to observe the planet had instead contaminated part of it. The disaster changed how governments around the world viewed the risks of nuclear-powered spacecraft. Apollo 1. By 1967, the United States was racing to land the first humans on the moon. Apollo 1 would be the first crewed mission of the Apollo program. On January 27th, astronauts Virgil Gus Grissom, Edward White, and Roger Chaffee climbed into their spacecraft, but they weren't preparing for launch. It was only a routine countdown test. The rocket wasn't even fueled. Everyone expected the exercise to end within a few hours. Inside the capsule, the crew sat in an atmosphere of pure oxygen. At the time, NASA believed it was safe. Then, at 6:31 p.m., someone reported a problem. Fire. Within seconds, flames spread through the cabin. Temperatures rose almost instantly. The astronauts tried to escape, but there was one major problem. The hatch opened inward. As the fire heated the air, the pressure inside the capsule increased so much that the crew could no longer open the hatch. Engineers outside desperately tried to reach them, but the fire spread faster than anyone could respond. Less than 30 seconds after the first report of fire, all 3 astronauts had died. Investigators later concluded that the fire most likely began with a small electrical short circuit. Under normal conditions, it might have caused only a minor fire, but inside a spacecraft filled with pure oxygen, that tiny spark was enough to ignite the cabin. The pure oxygen caused the flames to spread with incredible speed, leaving the crew almost no time to escape. The tragedy shocked the United States. NASA immediately suspended the Apollo program. Investigators spent months examining every part of the spacecraft. The cabin was completely redesigned. Flammable materials were removed. The hatch was replaced with one that could be opened in seconds. Those changes delayed the moon program, but they also made future missions much safer. Just 2.5 years later, Apollo 11 successfully landed astronauts on the moon. That achievement was built on lessons learned from Apollo 1, a mission that never left the launch pad ultimately changed the course of space exploration forever. Before you go, if you enjoyed this video or learned something new, please subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, but it makes a huge difference. Every new subscriber helps us spend more time researching and creating documentaries like this. And if you haven't seen our other videos yet, click on one of them on your screen now. There are many more unbelievable true stories waiting for you.